For today's cup of coffee, Leo King had said that today would be filled with frustrations. Boy, was he right.
He was right on her end. On mine, there has been no frustrations.
Right.
She's been making the frustrations.
No. Anyhow.
She's been frustrated because I can't hear properly, even though she's dealt with this for 22 years.
No. And yet he will wear a beanie over his ears and then complain that he can't hear.
Even when I have the beanie off, I can't hear properly.
My God. Anyhow.
And it's cold in here, and she wanted me to turn the air off, or the heat off.
You could have put a hoodie on like anybody else.
I would still be freezing even in that hoodie.
Look, it's not that cold in here. It's really not. It is a matter of conserving fuel. Everybody in America, unless they're amongst the wealthy people, understand about the conservation of fuel right now, and it's going to get worse. So, that's why.
Time to go outside and start a fire.
Well, if you want to, we've got a burn barrel. We've got a burn barrel outside, and we've got wood that we can put in it. So we could do the hobo life if we need to.
Mm-hmm.
Anyhow, there's going to be lots of page rustling today because the amount of research material that was available was vast. I'm just going to read snippets. And, of course, the links will be in the description box. This is about silent sound. That is a thing. And, there was one source that I had printed off and did not use. And, I will include that in the references and stuff. But they had chosen probably one of the worst titles for this subject matter that could have ever been picked, which was Silent but Deadly. And I'm like, everybody, they put that with some other topic.
That joke is funny, though.
It is, but
So, no, I disagree. I think that was perfect.
No. Anyhow.
Especially for what we had to deal with before.
What?
Damn cats.
What I have is actually the one I'm primarily going to use is The Military Use of Silent Sound by Judy Wall, and it says that she has excerpts from Nexus Volume 5, Issue 6, October/November 1998, from Raven One website, recovered through Wayback Machine website.
Okay.
Yeah. And I will tell you, some of those early like computer pages and stuff like that, people's like, well, that's old school. The information is valid just because it's not in today's format. Mm-hmm. It's not got all the bells and the whistles and the pretty and the lovely fonts and blah, blah, blah. Oh, my God, Greta Thunberg, I did that.
Yeah.
Anyhow, but some of those older web pages and stuff, mm-hmm. don't throw those out. People don't want to read them a lot of times because they are a little more cumbersome to read.
Mm-hmm. Well, guess what? Those older web pages, a lot of them are defunct by now.
Well, that's true too, and that's one of the things about the Wayback Machine. Mm-hmm. Because there's a lot of things that's going down the memory hole that still very beneficial.
But even the Wayback Machine doesn't have everything.
No, it doesn't. But I mean, how many websites do we need that tells you how to fix, a chicken casserole? Honestly.
Those have always been around.
I know, but anyhow. So,
hello, Milo.
About this author, and Judy Wall is editor and publisher of Renaissance, the newsletter of the Bioelectromagnetic Special Interest Group. And this article shows clearly the military's intent to use every possible thought-influencing technology. This technology is largely classified, but there are leaks such as this article. And again, this was written in 98. And so I'm going to go through here. I did highlight a lot of it. I may be a little bit sporadic as far as trying to keep up with all of it, and the cats, and just every kind. There's every conceivable distraction that could possibly be. This article represents two parallel tracks on which thought-influencing technology is being used and further developed, such as radio frequency signals based on World War II phenomenon called radar hearing, and ultrasound signals which can be transmitted through the air or piggybacked on radio and TV signals. Now, I had heard people speak of this in the past couple of years and had wondered about the validity of it. And I know that I had a weirdness that happened to me. I had a lot of weirdness happen to me in 2013, one of which I could not, as far as radio and TV and stuff like that, I couldn't be around it because there was, and I knew it was a frequency. I felt like I was going to fly apart. And so it was, of course, my family thought I had absolutely lost my rabbit-ass mind, but had to get away from it. And I will tell you this, my father had that happen to him at points in his life.
Okay.
So I don't know, maybe some of us are more sensitive to some of this shit than other people. I don't know.
Maybe.
But anyhow, as far as they talked about some of the PSYOPs weaponry that was used in the Persian Gulf War, and for years rumors had persisted that the United States Department of Defense had been engaged in research and development of ultra-sophisticated mind-altering technology. Confirmation of this came to Ms. Wall recently in the form of two ITV News Bureau from London wire service bulletins. And the March 23rd, 1991 news brief, High-Tech Psychological Warfare Arrives in the Middle East, describes a U.S. psychological operations, or PSYOPs, tactic directed against Iraqi troops in Kuwait during Operation Desert Storm. The maneuver consisted of a system in which subliminal mind-altering technology was carried on standard radio frequency broadcast. The March 26, 1991 news brief stated that among the standard military planning groups in the center of U.S. war planning operations was an unbelievable and highly classified PSYOPs program utilizing silent sound techniques. The opportunity to use this method occurred when Saddam Hussein's military command and control system was destroyed. The Iraqi troops were then forced to use commercial FM radio stations to carry encoded commands, which were broadcast on the 100 megahertz frequency. The U.S. PSYOPs team set up its own portable FM transmitter utilizing the same frequency in a deserted city. The U.S. transmitter overpowered the local Iraqi station. Along with patriotic and religious music, PSYOPs transmitted vague, confusing, and contradictory military orders and information. Subliminally, a much more powerful technology was at work. A sophisticated electronic system to speak directly to the mind of the listener, to alter and entertain his brainwaves, to manipulate his brain's electroencephalograph patterns, and artificially implant negative emotional states such as feelings of fear, anxiety, despair, and hopelessness. This subliminal system didn't just tell a person to feel an emotion, it made them feel it. It implants the emotion in their minds. And that's kind of horrific when you really think about that. Mm-hmm. And that this was done. And somebody can go and read the full article, and it goes into how the use of this technology was one of the ways that they got a lot of the Iraqis to just give up, to surrender. And people are like, why are they doing this? Well, when you've got these mind control things going on. So The mind-altering mechanism is based on a subliminal carrier technology, the silent sound spread spectrum, sometimes called the S-Quad or Squad.
All right. I don't know what that...
Well, that's,
I don't know what any of this is, honestly.
That's all right. It was developed by Dr. Oliver Lowery of Norcross, Georgia, and is described in U.S. Patent number 5159703, Silent Subliminal Presentation System, dated October 27th, 1992. And I will include that patent in the description box. Because when you go through there and you read that, and it's like, how many hundreds of thousands of things are there in the patent office that most people don't even know enough to ask a question about?
Right.
But the abstract for this patent says, a silent communication system in which non-oral carriers in the very low or very high audio frequency range or in the adjunct ultrasonic frequency spectrum are amplitude or frequency modulated with the desired intelligence and propagated acoustically or vibrationally for inducement into the brain, typically through the use of loudspeakers, earphones, or piezoelectric transducers. The modulated carriers may be transmitted directly in real time or may be conveniently recorded and stored on mechanical, magnetic, or optical media for delayed or repeated transmission to the listener.
So basically any format it can be recorded on.
At that time, absolutely. And the fact that it can be carried on other, like radio, like TV.
So they could have put it on anything like vinyl.
Well, they did.
Tape.
You know, you've heard of these self-help cassette tapes, right?
Yeah.
Same technology. Only it was used supposedly for the purpose of goods. You can go on YouTube right now and find how many of these subliminal or these different frequencies to listen to, the ones that have the subliminal messages and stuff like that. And what always bothered me, they're saying that they're saying whatever. But if you can't hear it, how the hell do you know what is actually being said? So I'm not a fan of that.
I just listen to frequencies or whatever.
Well, there are helpful frequencies and there are those that are not. Anyhow,
so you choose the ones that vibe with you that are good.
Well, according to literature by Silent Sounds Incorporated, it is now possible using supercomputers to analyze human emotional patterns and replicate them, then store these emotion signature clusters on another computer and at will silently induce and change the emotional state in a human being. Silent Sounds Inc. states that it is interested only in positive emotions, but the military is not so limited. That is a U.S. Department of Defense project, or that it is a U.S. Department of Defense project is obvious. Edward Tilton, president of Silent Sounds Incorporated, says about S-Quad in a letter dated December the 13th, 1996. All schematics, however, have been classified by the U.S. government, and we are not allowed to reveal the exact details. We make tapes and CDs for the German government, even the former Soviet Union countries, all with the permission of the U.S. State Department, of course. The system was used throughout Operation Desert Storm, Iraq, quite successfully. So, by studying the subtle characteristic brainwave patterns that occur when a subject experiences a particular emotion, scientists have been able to identify the brainwave pattern and can now duplicate it. These clusters are then placed on the silent sound carrier frequencies and will silently trigger the occurrence of the same basic emotion in another human being. Okay? That's scary.
Yeah, that is terrifying.
And there's a lot more involved than the simple subliminal sound system. There are numerous patented technologies which can be piggybacked individually or collectively onto a carrier frequency to elicit all kinds of effects. There appear to be two methods of delivery with the system. One is direct microwave induction into the brain of the subject, which is limited to short-range operations. The other, as described above, utilizes ordinary radio and television carrier frequencies. Or concerts. We'll get to that in just a moment.
It could be on anything.
It certainly could. It says, beneath the musical broadcast that you hear in stores and shopping malls may be a hidden message which exhorts against shoplifting. And while voice commands alone are powerful, when the subliminal presentation system carries cloned emotional signatures, the result is overwhelming. Free market uses for this technology are the common self-help tapes, positive affirmation, relaxation, and meditation tapes, as well as methods to increase learning capabilities. In a medical context, these systems can be used to great advantage to treat psychiatric and psychosomatic problems, and can be a system for remediating the profoundly deaf. However, the U.S. government has denied or refused to comment on mind-altering any of this stuff, especially weapons. Of course they do. It said that the U.S. News and World Report actually ran an article titled Wonder Weapons, which was basically a review of the new so-called non-lethal or less than lethal weapons. Not one word about S-Quad. Excerpts from the article read, says Charles Bernard, a former Navy weapons research director, I have yet to see one of these ray gun things that actually works. And DARPA, Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, has come to us every few years to see if there are ways to incapacitate the central nervous system remotely. Dr. F. Terry Hambrecht, head of the neuroprocess program at NIH, told U.S. News, but nothing has ever come of it. He said this is too science fiction and far-fetched. Gaslighting has gone on for many a year. Now, the idea behind non-lethal weapons is to incapacitate the enemy without actually killing them, or in the case of riot control or hostage situations, to disable the participants without permanent injury, preferably without their knowing it. The electromagnetic mind-altering techniques would all fall into this class of weapons, but since they are all officially non-existent, who is to decide when and where they'll be used? And why should selected companies in the entertainment industry reportedly be allowed access to this technology when the very fact of its existence is denied to the general public? So this has been going on for many, many years. People have no clue.
And why don't they know? Why can't they find out that they're doing this?
Well, again, this is a secret. All this stuff has been used against the population for years.
Mm-hmm. And so what is preventing people from doing their own research about it? Because it's obviously out there since you found it.
Exactly. That's what I'm doing. It's like spreading the wealth of knowledge that I have.
Yeah.
You know. But I've got to compete against the makeup tutorials and the cat videos.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, that's all right. And maybe it's those who need to know wander by these by these channels.
Mm-hmm.
Anyhow, ignorance is not always bliss. The Joint Economics Committee, chaired by Jim Saxton, who is a Republican from New Jersey, convened February 25th, 1998, for hearing on radio frequency weapons and proliferation, potential impact on the economy. And they invited testimonies which were by several authorities from the military. And although these statements gave information of technical interest, they were perhaps more important for the information they did not give, which was information on the existence of radio frequency weapons that directly affect the human brain and nervous system. And considering the amount of time since this was written, you know all that has been ramped up, and it's been honed to a fine tooth.
Yeah.
and this was interesting, The Power of the Military-Industrial Complex, and Jane Wiseman had written an apt description of the situation, and this was about the forces that be and how the situation came about. Quote, during the Cold War, the United States not only engaged in a relatively open nuclear arms race with the Soviet Union, but also engaged in a secret race developing unconventional weapons. As the intelligence agencies, which prior to the Second World War had merely played a supporting role within the government, continued to increase their power, so did the funds spent on developing techniques designed to outsmart each other. And as the U.S. intelligence community began to grow, a secret culture sprang about which enabled the intelligence players to implement the various developed techniques to cleverly circumvent the democratic processes and institutions. Like many other democracies, the U.S. government is made up of two basic parts: the elected constituency, and which are the various governors, judges, congressmen, and the president, and the unelected bureaucracies, as represented by the numerous federal agencies. In a well-balanced and correctly functioning democracy, the elected part of the government is in charge of its unelected bureaucratic part, giving the people a real voice in the agenda set by their government. While a significant part of the U.S. government no doubt follows this democratic principle, a considerable portion of the U.S. government operates in complete secrecy and follows its own unaccountable agenda, which, unacknowledged, very often is quite different from the public agenda.
Okay.
Now, we have seen that played out and very much in your face mode over the past few years.
Yeah, we have.
And Dwight D. Eisenhower, in his farewell address to the nation in 1961, said, "We have been compelled to create a permanent armaments industry of vast proportions. Added to this, 3.5 million men and women are directly engaged in the defense establishment. We annually spend on military security more than the net income of all United States corporations. This conjunction of an immense military establishment and a large arms industry is new in the American experience. The total influence, economic, political, and even spiritual, is felt in every city, every state house, every office of the federal government. We recognize the imperative need for this development, yet we must not fail to comprehend its grave implications. Our toil, resources, and livelihood are all involved. So is the very structure of our society. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or our democratic processes." End quote. The United Nations was established in 1945 with the aim of saving succeeding generations from the scourge of war. In 1975, the General Assembly considered a draft first proposed by the Soviet Union, which said the prohibition of development and manufacture of new types of weapons of mass destruction and new systems of such weapons. Oof. In 1979, the Soviet Union added a list of some types of potential weapons of mass destruction. Radiological weapons using radioactive materials which could produce harmful effects similar to those of a nuclear explosion. Another one was particle beam weapons based on charged or neutral particles to affect biological targets. Infrastructure, or infrasonic, I've lost it, acoustic radiation weapons, and electromagnetic weapons operating at certain radio frequency radiations which could have injurious effects on human organs. In response, the U.S. and other Western nations stalled.
Damn.
Because we're talking on this one as far as the mind control, but there is other research out there that does very much discuss the effects on tissue And then, honestly, did you ever see the movie Dune?
Yeah. We watched it together before.
Right. Do you remember that the wielding weapon that they had that they could destroy with a word?
Yeah.
Because it was sound?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that it could burst organs and do all these different things like that.
And that's basically what they have right here.
And the secrecy involved in the development of the electromagnetic mind-altering technology reflects the tremendous power that is inherent in it. Whoever controls this technology can control the minds of men, all men. He who controls the spice controls the universe.
Yeah.
It says Dr. Michael Persinger was a professor of psychology and neuroscience at a university in Canada, and his findings were that strong electromagnetic fields can affect a person's brain. And he said temporal lobe stimulation can evoke the feeling of a presence, disorientation, and perceptual irregularities. It can activate images stored in the subject's memory, including nightmares and monsters that are normally suppressed. And I always think of that episode of House where the kid was seeing that he was being abducted by aliens. And what he was having was temporal lobe seizures.
Huh.
So if you've got technology that can, induce that, that's horrifying.
Yeah, absolutely, that's horrifying. That's just...
And he wrote an article a few years after this that was on the possibility of directly, accessing every human brain by electromagnetic induction of fundamental algorithms. Hey, this is big brain stuff,
I ain't there yet.
Anyhow,
smooth brain gang.
The abstract reads, contemporary neuroscience suggests the existence of fundamental algorithms by which all sensory transduction is translated into an intrinsic brain-specific code. Direct stimulation of these codes within the human temporal or limbic cortices or applied electromagnetic patterns may require energy levels which are within the range of both geomagnetic activity and contemporary communication networks. A process which is coupled to the narrow band of brain temperature could allow all normal human brains to be affected by a subharmonic whose frequency range was around 10 hertz, but would only vary by 0.1 hertz. And he concludes the article by saying, within the last 2 decades, a potential has emerged which was improbable, but which is now marginally feasible. This potential is the technical capability to influence directly the major portion of the approximately 6 billion brains of the human species without mediation through classical sensory modalities by generating neural information within a physical medium within which all members of the species are immersed. The historical emergence of such possibilities, which have ranged from gunpowder to atomic fission, have resulted in major changes in the social evolution that occurred inordinately quickly after the implementation. Reduction of the risk of the inappropriate application of these technologies requires the continued and open discussion of their realistic feasibility and implications within the scientific and public domain, unquote. We do not have open discussion because the government has totally denied the existence of this technology.
Yeah, which we all know not to trust them.
Sure. Now, that was in 98 or whatever it was. Now, since then, we have AI.
That is true. We do have AI
We
now.
do. And on the patent...
It's still primitive, but it's getting smarter and smarter as the days go on.
That's what the public's been told. Yeah. Because we don't know shit. What little bit is dripped out to us is is probably 20 to 50 years behind what is hidden.
Probably.
Oh, yeah. And on the patent, I thought this was interesting. It says objects of the invention. And A was to provide a technique for producing a subliminal presentation which is inaudible to the listener, yet is perceived and demodulated or decoded by the ear for use by the subconscious mind. B, to provide a technique for transmitting inaudible subliminal information to the listeners at a constant high level of signal strength and on a clear band of frequencies. And C, to provide a technique for producing inaudible subliminal presentations to which music or other foreground programming may be added if desired. And the fact that this was written a considerable amount of time. I have papers everywhere.
You got a pile of them.
I do. 98.
Dear God.
So let's, look at what happened over the weekend as far as this concert thing. And
I don't think it was a frequency. I think it was like people were drugged there. People were drugged. Like someone was running around, I think, injecting people or something like that.
I've heard a lot of different theories.
The smoke obviously can suffocate people.
I've heard a lot of different theories. But the one individual, they were talking about this type of quote-unquote music that was playing for hours prior to the actual concert, and it was just weird and unnerving and not in a happy way. You would just have to, I'm sure you can find examples of what that was.
Yeah.
I had heard, as far as, never before in my life have I heard of people going around and randomly injecting people. And I will tell you why. Because it's just not feasible. It's not feasible. Because, one, as far as to get somebody at a right point to have an intramuscular injection, if you hit a bone, something like that, the needle's going to break. Even if you've got like my little insulin needles and stuff like that, they're not, they bend, so you breathe on them and they bend. So it's not feasible that you had a passel of people that had planned to go around and inject people with whatever. And where are the toxicology reports on the ones that claimed that they had been injected? I know there was a police officer that his captain or whoever it was had come out and said that his officer had claimed that he thought that he had been injected at the back of the neck and that there did appear to be a pinprick. But now, like I said, where's the toxicology report? Because somebody could have had a thumbtack.
I don't think any medical reports have come out yet.
Well, and as far as there's various and sundry footage that's available. I know that I listened to a couple of young men last night. Their take on what had happened was that they were up at the front of the crowd and people pushing and pushing. That's not uncommon when it is a very crowded event.
Yeah.
I mean, I've felt sold out festival seating before. Only time in my life that that was back when they would still allow that, and it was horrific because you couldn't. I mean, as far as the crowd would carry you, you were so packed in that you couldn't move, which is not. And if somebody had fallen, would they have been trampled? Well, yeah. So, what did I do? I did what that one kid said that he did. It's like, get me out of here. He went back to the back to where he got out of it. But they were being crushed. But then there was other video footage that there were not that many people that were there. So, I think that it was not just one thing that happened there. I think there were a lot of things. They were talking about, people having to be tested for certain things, people having the, option of having different types of injections, legal injections there. So
the fact that he was up there on the platform and he couldn't see that people were passing out, even though he was high enough to see the entire crowd. He had people that were supposed to alert him to that. And as far as they had past video footage, or it was footage from
previous concerts where someone wanted his shoes or whatever, and he had called for people in the crowds to severely harm whoever was after his shoes.
That ain't good.
No, it's not.
I was never a fan of him anyway. I don't think I even listened to one of his songs.
I don't worship anybody. I mean, seriously. I mean, when we got to go see Alice Cooper, that was amazing. It was awesome. But now, as far as doing something, running over somebody or harming someone to go and get to shake this man's hand, no. I like his music. Lots have enjoyed it for many years.
Yeah.
He's a talented man, but he is a man. He is not a god. And this is what happens
when... No celebrity is a god.
But there are people who put celebrities and stuff up there as gods.
Yeah.
And when you've got these people that call themselves influencers, well, if you've got a young person who rational part of the brain is not functioning, what you've got is a clusterfuck right there. And that's exactly what we've got going on in our country today.
Yep.
Now, are these different factions and the divisions within our country orchestrated? Absolutely. I don't believe in coincidence. But like I said, several years ago, and over the past few years, I've heard a variety of people from different walks in life talk about as far as these frequencies on TVs, on radios, different things like that being used against the public. I understand very much how that is a thing.
Yep, I can understand that too. And we know that goes on, and it still goes on.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know how common it is for, like, smaller towns or whatever to get those frequencies.
TV.
Well, yeah.
Radio.
Well, we have more so, like, local networks and such like that, don't we?
Nope. Mockingbird Media, the signal goes, there's 6 groups right now that control all of it. All of it. Comes from central points. And it's like spider's web. You've got point here, and then the transmitters are here and here and here, and they got the same signal. They do not originate a signal. It comes from someplace.
All right, then.
Yeah. And that was what, your father and I was talking about that, because he has a great understanding of how, radio frequencies and TV frequencies and stuff like that work.
He does.
He does. Really does. He has worked with this for many years. I value his opinion on all these things. And learn from him. Yeah. And he knows all these things, too, because he studied them for years as well.
Yeah, he does.
So, disturbing things. Everybody knows it's disturbing, but maybe at least now you've got a term to amuse and mystify your friends. Silent sound.
Silent sound, that's the frequencies.
Which was a hell of a lot better than the silent but deadly. You may amuse and mystify your friends with that, too, in a different form. Anyhow, this was, like I said, I'm trying to mix in some of the rabbit holes, and some of them get hardcore.
Another example of, like, silent frequency, silent sounds is like a dog whistle.
Yes.
We can't hear it,
no, we can't.
But dogs can.
Absolutely.
Or animals can in general.
Right.
But it's high enough that we cannot hear it.
Right. And that's the thing. There were some of the frequencies that were really high beyond human hearing, and then some that are very, very low.
Yeah.
But the bodies still respond to it. And where it was talking about the electromagnetic, the Earth itself has an electromagnetic frequency. And as that changes, because there is much evidence as far as, magnetic north and stuff like that, that moves quite a bit. But some of the other research I have been following for the past couple of years thinks that the core itself may be shifting. So there is such a thing as a planetary flip. Yeah.
All right. Well.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
Yeah, just a little bit.
So, anyhow.
Ow.
If you all have experiences with paranormal, supernatural encounters with UFOs, aliens, cryptids,
weird frequencies.
If you have had any experiences or any knowledge about some of these weapons that are being used against the general populace, anything like that, send me an email, cupofcoffeewithscream@gmail.com. And we can't control what happens. We can control our response to what happens. Yeah. This is another reason as far as being alert and attentive to yourself, your surroundings, different things like that. Mm-hmm. If you find yourself thinking in an abnormal way, behaving in an abnormal way, you might want to find out why.
Yeah.
You know? So,
Yep.
Lots of things to ponder. But know that you are appreciated and loved. Thank you very much for sharing coffee with us today.
Yes, we appreciate every single one of you.
And we'll see you on the next cup.
Don't forget to like, share, comment, and most of all, subscribe.
Bye.
Bye.